Hello, everybody. So today, not feeling great, so no cam and keeping this setup very, very simple. So today we're going to be going into, or for this video per se, we're going to be going into the metabolic pathways of glucose and or alternate metabolic pathways. So the gist of this is how do we make energy in our body, and how does our body decide when to store this energy? So, you're going for a run, you can tap into those stores so you can run for a long period of time. So here, you have your food intake here, and you bring in your food, and then your food's made of your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your triglycerides, of course. So fats, carbs, and proteins. How how do they get processed? Well, in your digestive system, you break them down into the individual subunits and you absorb them. So the individual subunits of proteins, remember, are the amino acids. Carbohydrates are broken down into glucose. And then, well, fats, they're absorbed a little differently. Don't worry about them. And what your body does with this then, so glucose is the big one. Glucose is where you make ATP. Everything, you see all these arrows are feeding into glucose here for energy production in a form of ATP. That's the most important part, but of course you need to make proteins. You need to store lipids and fats. You want to store glucose as well so you can tap into it as an energy source. And here I have a couple big words up here. Gluconeogenesis, glycogenesis, glycogenolysis. That's a lot of, tongue twisters. So, but they all have a gluco or glyco in it. So, glucose, remember, is a monomer, so a single carbohydrate. Glycogen, glycogen is how we store glucose in the liver. So, you can also store some in the muscles and things like that. So, it's a chain of glucose held together. So, when we say glycogenesis is referring to the formation of glycogen here. Glycogenolysis, so here glycogen, lysis is splitting. Glycogenolysis means you are splitting glycogen down into glucose. So glycogen can be broken down into glucose then here as well. Gluconeogenesis is where if you don't have enough glucose, so something like the ketone diet, people who do the ketone diet are limiting themselves carbohydrates, glucose. And in that case, their body is taking amino acids, proteins, fatty acids, and converting them into glucose. So it takes these and converts them to glucose. And that's called gluconeogenesis. So genesis is formation, glucose. So gluconeogenesis, the formation of new glucose. And then that can feed in for ATP production because your body wants to keep those glucose levels in your blood stable. If they're dropped from not enough carbohydrates in your diet, it will pick them back up for you. So those are the first couple terms right there. But now let's go through this pathway of going from glucose to ATP. It's a complex pathway. It involves something called glycolysis, which occurs in the cytoplasm, pyruvate oxidation, which occurs in the mitochondria, the Krebs cycle, which is also in the mitochondria, and oxidative phosphorylation, which is in the inner mitochondrial membrane. So you see, most of these are in the mitochondria, and that's why the mitochondria is an important organelle in the cell for ATP production. So here in the cytoplasm, glycolysis, glycolysis. So you're splitting glucose in half. So these are called pyruvate. So this all occurs in the cytoplasm. And then you can make 2 ATP from this as well. Don't worry, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of why we make 2 ATP and whatnot in this course. But you make 2 ATP. That's not a lot of ATP, by the way. If oxygen is present, you can then make way more ATP. So here, you then go into the mitochondria. The purpose of the mitochondria, well, the mitochondria requires there to be oxygen. And this is why we require oxygen to be alive. is for the mitochondria to make ATP via oxidative phosphorylation. But first, we have to take those pyruvate molecules and convert them into something called acetyl-CoA, which happens inside the mitochondria. So the matrix is like the cytoplasm of the mitochondria. So pyruvate to acetyl-CoA, and there's where some of the CO2 you exhale comes from. And then we go through what's called the Krebs cycle, which is also in the mitochondrial matrix, and a whole bunch of CO2 comes out there, and a whole bunch of electron carriers, and a little bit of ATP comes out there as well. But the big thing then takes place in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. This is where you have what's called oxidative phosphorylation and the electron transport chain. So as these electrons that were removed up here, I know we're not getting into the complexities of this, fall down a couple different enzymes found in this membrane, it causes the formation of ATP. And here shows oxygen is the final electron acceptor. That's why it's called oxidative phosphorylation. And phosphorylation is where it's phosphorylating, adding a phosphate group to ATP. And usually you can make about 32 ATP then from one glucose. So you can see how that's substantially different. And that's only in the presence of oxygen. If you were running low on oxygen here, all this would shut off. The Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle would shut off. You would stop this transition, and then you would only go through glycolysis and make 2 ATP, and go through something called lactic acid fermentation. So that's the 2-minute version of oxidative phosphorylation and, well, ATP production. But that's not the only way, only type of metabolism we're going through. We also have lipid metabolism. This takes place in both the cytoplasm and the mitochondria. We have beta oxidation, lipogenesis, and lipolysis. So here, beta oxidation, this is the breaks down fats to acetyl-CoA. So if we're looking up here, if we can break down fats to acetyl-CoA, or even if we go further up here, so here, acetyl-CoA would be like right here in this process. If we can break down fats, it's kind of referring to this arrow right there as beta oxidation. Breaking down fats into acetyl-CoA, you can then feed that into the Krebs cycle. And that's what's happening here. So beta oxidation is converting fats to that acetyl-CoA and that's how you can break down energy. You get more energy from breaking down fats, but it's slower process. Lipogenesis then is when that you have enough ATP, so your body stores stuff as fat. So that acetyl-CoA, when there's a buildup, gets converted to fats. And here just showing a fatty acid getting broken down and then eventually becomes acetyl-CoA down here, which then enters the Krebs cycle. Don't worry about all the little nuances in this image. And then lipolysis, lipo, lipid, lysis, splitting, breakdown of fats and other lipids to release fatty acids. So here, remember, a triglyceride is 3 fatty acids. So here, if we're releasing fatty acids, we're breaking down those triglycerides. And then the last little bit here is protein metabolism. So protein metabolism takes place in the cytoplasm, and this is where you can feed in all the different amino acids into different parts of this process. So either becoming pyruvate, acetyl-CoA, different parts. So this is, the citric acid cycle here or the Krebs cycle. They can come into different steps in that cycle and so forth. So a lot going on, I know, but your body gets energy from all these sources. And so this shows that. So that food intake, all of it can arrow back here and then end up becoming ATP. If you want to play with something really cool here, you can search the Roche biochemical pathways. There are the URL. You might not be able to see it up there. Here, this is the Roche biochemical pathways here is what you want to search. And then you come down here and click explore the pathways. These are the biochemical pathways of life. And so here, this is glucose. This is going through glycolysis. There's pyruvate. We just talked about pyruvate. So you see, it's a lot more complex than what I showed you today. There's acetyl-CoA. Remember how we just talked about lots of stuff feeds into acetyl-CoA? So we have lipids, fatty acids being broken down here. They can get fed in. Remember, that's beta oxidation. And then here's the citric acid cycle. You see that also gets very complex. So not a simple system in our body. This is all the metabolism going on in your body at any given moment. You make and break everything you need, and it's very complex, and all these little blue words are enzymes, and anything doesn't work, you're having issues. So not a good thing. But that's all I have for today, or for this video per se. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.